never seen.
Yo, what's up guys? Bill here, Classic Rock and Metal Review. Time for another edition. This will be episode 3 of Love You Long Time. Let's find out. This one, you got another classic 80s metal band, German metal band, Bullet, and the album No Mercy. Album is from 83. I picked this joint up in 84. So we'll get into like a little band history and just how I came about getting this album. Totally my own little venture with it. And basically, the whole point of the episode, as much as I am a collector of music, I'm more of like, or just as much, a recollector of getting some things I used to have and went by the wayside for one reason or another. And it's really just been interesting picking up things from the 80s that I haven't heard since then. And just, seeing what if the music to me now matches the memory. So that's the point of the episode. Some strong stuff here from Bullet. It's metal. I'll get into the specifics about it. It's really kind of a crossover of some different kinds of hard rock, metal. But we'll get into all that in a minute. If you guys can like and subscribe, we're just like hanging out. The name of the station tells you all it is. Channel, whatever you want to call it. Tonight, we're changing it up. I'm not beyond changing it a little up from the whiskey and vodka. Doing a little blonde IPA action here. Oh, man. I needed that. All right, so let's get into Bullet. There's actually 9 or 10 bands named Bullet, as you can imagine. There's one from America. There's one from Sweden. I think there's a Canadian. I'm not even sure. But the only one I knew about until researching for this episode was the German band Bullet. I'll give you their history as quickly as I can. It's probably more interesting for me to tell you about how I got into them, but we'll get to that in a second. Bullet forms in 1978. They're from Bochum, Germany. They go by the name Teaser. They have original vocalist and rhythm guitarist Klaus Steele, who's still here on No Mercy. Like I said, this album's 1983. Drums, Mike Lichtenberg. Again, still with the band. He was with the band the whole time, as was Klaus Steele. Original guitarist, Paul Silas. Bassist, Volker Pechtold. They, like I said, formed in 78. They changed the name to Bullet in 1980 and put out a debut album, 1981, full-length album. I don't think it does much for them anywhere at all. Maybe in Germany, I'm not even 100% sure. I had not heard of them at that point. In 1983, for you Udo and Accept fans, you probably already know this, or maybe you don't, they changed 2 members. The guitarist becomes Jürgen Graf, and the bassist, Fiddy Weinhold. These guys would end up with Udo in the mid-90s, and I think the bassist, Fiddy, would end up staying with them for a long time. Not so sure about Graf. Nevertheless, German producer, engineer, Dieter Dierks, gets involved with these guys to do No Mercy. As a matter of fact, I think he co-wrote 2 or 3 of the songs on here too. Although a lot of the credits, or a good amount of the credits, still go to the original guitarist Paul Silas also. A lot of co-writing on this album. Anyway, the album comes out in 83. And we all know who Dieter Dierks is, right? Scorpions, Accept, got Dokken launched in the early 80s. And so, by the way, they broke up in 1986 and never reformed. So no more albums, just the 2 albums. This being the most successful, second and most successful, but would be the final. They did end up doing 2 videos from this album, which I didn't even realize until looking up some of their action with this episode here. How did I find out about them? I'm going to tell you how. It was an ad in, I think it was Circus Magazine, or it might have been Hit Parader. They were the 2 big magazines I bought. Every magazine that came out, as far as Circus and Hit Parader. Some other magazines too, but they were a little harder to come by. I could get Circus and Hit Parader at the local drugstore, 7-Eleven, what have you. And it wasn't a full page, it was a half-page ad. And all it had really was, this album cover. And I forget what else it might have said. I probably should have looked it up. I'm sure it's probably findable. But nevertheless, that's all I really saw. And I'm not even sure if that was in 83. I feel like it was more in 84. because I didn't own this album until '84. So, the one thing I noticed that there was only one store that had this album. It was on cassette, and this is why I know I got it in late '84, because I had Crocus the Blitz. They're both on Arista Records. They both had that red cassette, where even the cassette case was red. Got rid of all my tapes a few years ago. Man, I really wish I would have kept on to them now. God damn it! All the shit I got rid of. But anyway, I remember thinking that was just another plus. So I saw the ad, and a few different times I went to the same store and picked that damn tape up and put it down a couple times. And finally, I went back and got it. Just off the cover, of course, that was cool, and I'm still good with this cover today, as you can imagine. The Bullet logo is cool. The title, band in the background, jamming in the shadow there. Names of the songs look good enough to me. This is how we decided to buy albums, sort of sight unseen, or unheard, I guess you'd say, back in the day. Titles were cool, but this was a risk. I was spending $8 or $10 on something I never heard a second of. But I immediately really, really liked this album. I probably put it, if I mentioned earlier, in the strong 8 range. Maybe on its best day I thought it was a 9, but just a solid 8 was my memory of it. So my first impressions then and now were that it was a strong metal album, had a little bit of, definitely had a German sound to it. A little Scorpions here, a little Accept there, and I had albums by both of those bands, of course. A little more like Blackout than Love at First Sting, which was good in my books. Vocals were a little jarring in a way. He's like such a high, strong singer, but he really gets up there, not in like a Judas Priest kind of way, but more in just like just has a high, intense voice, a little screechy kind of thing. But this is a really well-produced album. You could tell this wasn't thrown together. This was no joke. This was an album, meant for some success, and obviously they didn't reach it, in a commercial way, at least in the U.S. But so that's pretty much it. Let's go down the album title. Go down the album song list here. Look Out, opener. And by the way, this whole album, I think, is 33 minutes or something. So it's 10 songs, and it's to the point, and pretty much they don't mess around with too many long jams or anything. Look Out is an opener, basically the cousin of Blackout. It's almost the same title too. But you know what? You hear that at first when that riff comes on and it kind of sounds like Blackout. Then the song just full band kicks in, and it is similar, but it's got its own identity for sure. The vocals are nothing like Close Minds, so you got that going on, and it's just a strong song, and it's a great opener. Really good song. Drunken Nights, number 2. Drunken Nights sort of has like a bluesy chord progression to it. Not your typical metal sound as far as chords, or riff. Slow and sort of crawling, sort of, plotting, but it picks up double time in spaces, which kind of gives it some color, some contrast. And it's another pretty good song. I Sold My Soul for Rock and Roll. I think this was one of the videos. I think this was a single too. I'm not 100% sure of that, but definitely the most commercially viable song on here. Almost like boogie rock style, something that if you let Foghat do this song, they would sound great doing it too. So maybe Cinderella would be another good example of someone that could pull this song off and sound great. But definitely commercial potential there. But at the same time, it still really rocks. It's good, really good song. I would say one of my 3 or 4 favorites on the album. Sold My Soul for rock and roll. No Mercy title track. This is my favorite song on here. It's a shame it's only 2.5 minutes. Starts out with this driving bass riff, and it's not like he's just plucking strings. It almost sounds like he's jamming on chords. Really cool, driving, bass-driven riff song. Definitely sounds like something, once the guitars kick in, very Motorhead sounding. Totally sounds like this was a Motorhead song that Motorhead didn't record. And this is my favorite. Title track. Awesome. One Way Ticket is next. Another sort of Cinderella, AC/DC style, like heavy rock song, as opposed to metal. But the vocals here keep everything metal. So it's just okay, but it's my least favorite song on side 1 of the cassette, right? Of course, now we're looking at the 1995 Antisocial brand label CD. And FYI, there was another version of the CD in '97 that had a couple bonus tracks. But this is not easy to find and not cheap when you find it. Although I think I did come across this for $15 or something a couple months ago, so I snapped it right up. All right, so next up, Down by the Neon Lights. This is another really good song, and another one that probably had some potential for some, airplay and so forth. Down by the Neon Lights. It's heavy, but it's also sort of melodic, very catchy. Probably the catchiest song on here, along with Sold My Soul for Rock and Roll. Ace production. There's tons of layering of riffs, layering of vocals, and really I could say that for the whole CD. The whole album's like that. There sounds like there's 3 Claw Steels going on at the same time, harmonizing with himself. Guitars, I don't want to say constantly, but pretty often, more often than most bands, guitar riffs going on in the background, filling up space and stuff, and pretty tastefully done. It's not overdone. They keep the levels good to where it's not taking over the song. Down by the Neon Lights is a really good one. The production is really awesome on that one. Take You Out Tonight. I think this is another slow one. Slow one and heavy again. Kind of hard to describe this song. It's not like your typical song with like verse, chorus, solo. In fact, it doesn't really have a structure at all. It just kind of snakes and twists its way along. It's kind of like another sort of plodding song. But this one kind of goes out there on a limb a little bit. Like almost sounds like some synth metal. I don't know if they turn the guitar into like some sort of synth effect. It doesn't really sound like, it could be keys in the background. I'm trying to picture now, but it's just in spots. The solos, especially towards the end, there's a lot of echo, kind of trippy. Just different. This song's kind of different, different than the rest of the album, and it definitely works. This would be in like my top half of the album for sure. Ultra modern in places, but as heavy as the rest of the album. So you can't go wrong with this. 2 more songs, but getting parched again. It's a very consistently hard rocking CD for sure. Midnight Stalker next, 4 minutes 20 seconds. Slow melodic song and nothing special. Probably my least favorite on the whole album. Baby We Can Talk, last song. Now, this one's a little long, 6 minutes 15 seconds. Ballad. I guess you can call it power ballad, but not in the typical way of verse, chorus, verse. It starts with acoustic, then some electric sort of matches it. Then the bass and drums come in just to build a little drama. Then they drop out, but then they come back in for the chorus. But it's not like your power chorus, like say like Dockin' Alone Again or anything like that. I have to just keep saying that my least favorite songs on this album are still pretty good. So that'll do it, man. That's the rundown of these 10 songs. And as you can hear, I've listened to this 3 times in the last month or so, and love it long time. This one gets a thumbs up. Bullet No Mercy. If you like metal that is like the Scorpions, maybe accept, especially the vocals, Cinderella, Crocus, stuff in that ballpark, you'll be happy with this one. They also had a first album called Execution that I do not have. I've never heard. I have to check that one out. The one thing you might have to get past at first is Claw Steele's voice. Like I said, a little on the screechy side, but he's a really great singer. And when I first put it on last month, when I first got it back, that was the first thing I was like, wow, I don't remember this singing being so, high-pitched and all that stuff. Or screechy, I just keep using that word, sorry, but that's kind of how I feel. But the songs are so good, 3 or 4 songs in, you're kind of over that, and now it's like, oh, this is a damn good metal album. So, like I said, the 97 version, I think it's a different label, had 2 bonus tracks. That's probably be the way to go. These guys didn't put much out. This album's solid, man. Check it out. Love you long time. What's coming up next, guys? I think we're going to be covering box sets and super deluxe editions. Man, besides bootlegs, that's my other sort of obsession the last 5 years or so. Probably like a lot of y'all. If you guys can like and subscribe, come to the dark side. Hang out with us, classic rock and metal review, and whiskey, vodka, and beer review. All right, guys, that'll do it for tonight. I'll catch you soon enough. Later.